that I might be a little negligent in my duties of, sharing what little bit of information I have. So I told him that I would take that into consideration. I would definitely take that into consideration. So, alhamdulillah, the advice paid off. Walillahil hamd. I don't know if there were any questions or comments. I'll take a few and, kind of call it a night. We've been going for about an hour and 20 minutes at this point. If you don't have any questions, don't make up any questions, man. I'm cool with not answering questions. Answering questions doesn't define me. It doesn't make me feel better. It doesn't make me look like I'm some great scholar. Like it doesn't validate me. I don't have to answer questions. If you just want to say salam alaikum, you want to say what's up, whatever the case may be, cool. We don't have to make up questions. Like that's disingenuous. We can enjoy this time and the space that we have with one another without creating, unnecessary questions. Do I have a regular schedule for lessons? No, I don't. There is no regular schedule. If you'd have caught me about 4 years ago, then yeah. At this point in my life, no. Okay. So if it's somebody that is still looking to come to the marriage retreat, which will be in 2 weeks, inshallah, in Atlanta, if in fact there's someone who would like to purchase a ticket, there's a sister here that is willing to purchase a ticket for you. So if there's any brothers who would like to attend the marriage retreat, what are the root causes for a lack of spirituality? There's a lot. Number one, some people are just not religious. I mean, we have to factor that in. There's some people who are just not spiritual people. They're not religious people. They're not religious people. So a lack of spirituality sometimes could be just innate. That's just who you are. You're just not a spiritually inclined person. You know what I mean? Not even all of the Sahaba, they were the same way. The Prophet ¡SAW walked past a man and he said, "La adunnu annahu ya'lamu shay'an min dinina." I don't think this man knows anything from our religion. This is what the Prophet ﷺ said about the man. I don't think this guy knows anything from our religion. So there's just some people who are just not spiritually inclined. And that could be a root cause for, and sometimes we kind of overcompensate. Huh?
Can I get water?
You want water? Yeah. Here. Sometimes people overcompensate. Go ahead. Sometimes people overcompensate for the fact that they're just not spiritually inclined. So, they try to bury their lack of spirituality with, frivolous matters of the religion. And the fact of the matter is just standing in your discomfort. If that's just who you are, if you're not necessarily a spiritual person, then, some people are very ritualistic. They're very mechanical with the deen. But when you tap into that spiritual, which is why I think this is just my own personal philosophy. I believe wholeheartedly that a lot of the brothers and sisters who were like hardcore Salafis, there was this stigma that anything that has to deal with spirituality is automatically written off as some Sufi approach to Islam. Oh, that's the Sufis. Even the Sufis themselves have now championed this idea of deep matters of spirituality, higher levels of spiritual consciousness. When in fact, when you look into the biographies and the lives of the Salaf, the scholars of the past, the religious people of knowledge from the past, that associated with who we call the righteous predecessors, the Salaf as-Salih, you will find that these people were spiritual. You will find that these people were extremely spiritual. We're talking about some of the Sahaba, I believe it was Ibn Umar, used to urinate blood when it was time to pray. You had Sufyan al-Thawri. You had, all of these great scholars. You understand? But here again, the Salafis, anything that's going to force them to have a closer and more genuine relationship with God, they stray away from it. They stray away. Oh, that's the Sufis. The Sufis don't do this. Or the Sufis, the Salafis, it's almost like the Salafis are just mechanical. right? We just go through the rituals and we know Aqidah and we know the methodology of the Salaf and that's it. We don't know, but I mean, Imam Ahmed, can they get any more spiritual than that? Abdullah ibn Mubarak, rahimahullah ta'ala, was one of the, lectures that I gave in Philadelphia years ago. The biography of Abdullah ibn Mubarak. Go through that biography, man. Subhanallah. We're talking about, we're talking about deep matters. These guys we're talking about but you'll never get that image of the Salaf from our modern day African American Salafis. You'll never get that because they'll always write that off as being some Sufi approach to Islam when in fact that spiritual component was what made the Salaf as-Salih exactly who they were. You understand? Here you go. What's wrong with the Salaf, Akhi? Bye. Let me block you. Be gone. He's not even listening to the conversation. Nobody said nothing wrong with the Salaf. Here we go. What's wrong with the Salaf, Aki? Goodbye. Good night. Anyway, moving right along. Yeah, it's like subhanallah, like what attracted me to I remember when I first kind of understood about maybe roughly 80 to 85% of what I heard of Arabic. I was in like the ending of my second year in the Arabic language program. And myself, along with some other students of knowledge, we began going to sit with Sheikh Ibrahim, who at that time was teaching. I'm forgetting which book it was. I think it was Minhaj as-Sunnah. It was one of the Kutub as-Salaf. It was one of the books of the Salaf. And subhanAllah, the example after example that he would mention of the scholars of the past and, examples of their spirituality. This person used to make sujood so much that he left a hole in the floor, in the carpet. When he died, his wife saw a hole in the carpet and she knew that that's where her husband was making sujood. I'm forgetting who it was. So many examples, but you'll never get those examples from our modern day so-called Salafis because you can't talk about stuff that you are not doing. So you can't get up and give a lecture, outlining the spiritual, component, the spiritual approaches to Islam that many of the scholars of the Salaf that they were, involved with. You can't get up and because then now people are going to look at you and say, well, if you call yourself Salafi and I don't see you doing any of that. You know what I mean? Like now you put yourself under a microscope. So the best way to avoid that feeling of discomfort is to not talk about it at all. And to just brush it off as that's the Sufis. They focus on spirituality. We focus on minhaj and aqidah. Well, part of focusing on Aqidah, genius, is being more spiritual. How could it not be? If you're learning deep matters of who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is and who he is not, how does that look in real time? How does that manifest? It just manifests in the form of theory, or does it manifest in the form of practical application? If you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not everywhere, you know that Allah is above his throne and he can hear and see and manage the entire creation from above his throne, should that not manifest in the way that you carry yourself? Is it more difficult to attain spirituality? No, not at all. Not at all. Nobody can make a blanket statement like that to say in this age of technology and science, advancements in science and technology, that it's more difficult to be more spiritual. That's a very broad statement. Halal ways to increase? Just say ways that are, ways that are outlined by the Quran and the Sunnah and developing, first of all, spirituality is a matter of the heart. And all of the scholars of the past always put emphasis on purifying the heart. You can't be spiritual with your heart a mess. You understand? So the starting place for that, as the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Taqwa hahuna wa ashara ila sadrihi thalatha marrat." He said, "Taqwa is here. The place of taqwa is here," and he pointed to his chest 3 times, meaning the heart. He said, "Inna fil jasadi la mudgha, idha salahat salaha al jasadu kullu, wa idha fasadat fasada al jasadu kullu, ala wa hiya al qalb." He said, "Indeed, in the body there's a lump of flesh. If it is healthy, if it's sound, then the rest of the body will be healthy and sound. And if it is corrupt and unhealthy, then the rest of the body will be corrupt and unhealthy. And indeed, that lump of flesh is the heart." The starting place for preparing yourself, the prep for spirituality, is to clean your heart out first. And I think that is probably the biggest challenge for us in this day and time, because we sin so often. We sin so frequently. You understand? And sin, there's no greater obstacle for the heart than sin and disobedience. You understand? So we're talking about what is the starting place, or how do we begin? You got to start with you got to start cleaning your heart out. Before you, and I mean, once you clean your heart out, then you can begin looking at, some of the worship of the Prophet ﷺ and the things that he did. You know what I mean? Respect, brother. You don't necessarily have to be Muslim to understand what I'm saying. What I'm saying, Islam is a universal message. Islam is a universal message, and you don't have to necessarily be Muslim to relate or to be able to understand what I'm saying. This is universal talk. So I appreciate, you sharing and you being here and you listening. And I hope that, you come back and you share, you listen a little bit more. Any other questions related? I'll take maybe one more question, inshallah. Do I feel like there's an example between being religious and being spiritual? Absolutely. Religious just means that you follow the rituals of the religion. Spirituality is you have the ability, because you would have the what being religious is means that you have the ability to follow the rituals of that particular religion, whatever it is. If it's Islam, then of course we have a plethora of rituals in Islam. Adab of this, adab of, ekel, the etiquettes of eating, the etiquettes of drinking, the etiquettes of sleeping, the etiquettes of this, the etiquettes of giving salam. All of these are just rituals. Rituals. The theory of the religion, the ritual practices. That is what makes a person religious. You pray 5 times a day. You're religious. At least from the outside. But just because you pray 5 times a day doesn't mean that you have a deep, profound connection to God. It doesn't. It doesn't. But if you have a deep, profound connection to God, your praying 5 times a day is just your way of manifesting that. And how your prayer will look different as a spiritual person than a person who is just simply religious, can follow the rituals. You can get up on time for Fajr. You can go through the motions of the Salat. You can recite Quran very good. All right, but there's, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about the hypocrites, that when they stand for the Salat, they stand lazy. يَرَاءُونَ النَّاسِ وَلَا يَذْكُرُونَ اللَّهَ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. And they stand only to show off in front of the people, but they only remember Allah a little bit. But when a person is spiritual and they begin to manifest their spirituality through the ritual practices, those ritual practices will look a lot different. As the Prophet ﷺ would go into ruku' and stay in ruku' for so long that people would say he forgot that he's in ruku'. He would go into sujood. As Sufyan al-Thawri, one of the scholars of the past, said they saw Sufyan al-Thawri at the Haram in Mecca. And he went into sujood. He got up after Salatul Isha and he began to pray witr after Salatul Isha. He went into sujood and did not lift his head up for sujood until they were calling the adhan for Salatul Fajr. You understand? Imagine going into sujood and not lifting your head up from sujood after Salatul Isha, praying Salatul Witr, that you do not lift your head up from sujood until they call in the adhan for Fajr. You understand? That's spirituality. That's not religious. That's not a religious person. Religious person is going to go through the motions of the salah. Spiritual, there's an added layer of consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You understand? There's an added layer of consciousness of Allah. As the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he would pray, and when he would recite ayats, while he was in the salah, Allah showed him Jannah and he took a step forward. And Allah showed him the hellfire and took a step back. And the Sahaba are moving in the salah. They don't know why. And after the salah was over, they said, "Oh Messenger of Allah, we saw you take a step forward. We saw you take a step back." You know what I mean? The Prophet ﷺ said, "Ta'budullah ka'annaka tarahu." That, you worship Allah as if you can see him. And even though you know you can't see him, you know that he sees you. So even the hadith of Jibreel outlines the difference between being religious and being spiritual. What did Jibreel say? When the Prophet ﷺ said, "Akhbirni an al-Islam," tell me about Islam. What did Jibreel explain? Jibreel explained the rituals. The shahada, salat, zakat, right? And then he said, "Tell me about Iman." He said to believe in Allah, His Messenger, the last day, to the end of it, giving you the things that we believe in, the aqidah, the theory. And then he said, "Tell me about ihsan." This is higher levels of spiritual consciousness. He said to worship Allah as if you see him, and even though you know you can't, he said worship Allah as if you see him. You see, worship is there, but there's a different level to that worship. You understand? There's a different level to that worship. The first, he said, tell me about Islam. He said to bear witness that nothing has the right to be worshipped. He said, La ilaha illallah. He said, and to establish the salah. You understand? The rituals. When he got to ihsan, he said, tell me about ihsan. He said, ihsan is to worship Allah as if you see him. So there's an added layer of spiritual consciousness along with the ritual practices. You understand? Can I give you a book list? I'm not that guy. I'm sorry. Please excuse me. I'm not that guy. I don't read Islamic books in English. I don't read any Islamic books in English. I'm sorry. If I read anything in English, it's non-Islamic material. I mean, it all depends, where you are, and, is killing an apostate in Islamic teaching. Can you ask something that actually has some relevance to it? No one's killing an apostate. I'm sorry. We don't do that. No, I'm not on another level. I'm just not the right person to ask that. Find someone to answer that. I'm not the most qualified person to answer that question. It's not that I'm on another level. I'm just sharing with you something about myself personally. I don't read Islamic books in English. Okay, let me just block him. So, I saw the question about the book. My book, The Paradox of Change, I changed the subtitle called The Paradox of Change, The New Muslim's Guide to Overcoming Obstacles. So this is a book that I wrote actually about 10 years ago. In 2009, 2010, I first wrote the book. It was called The Paradox of Change, I believe Overcoming the Obstacles for New Muslim Women. I redid the book, revised the book, and alhamdulillah, the book is done. I believe the first book was like 100 and maybe 100 and a couple of pages. The book is now 200 plus pages. So it took me a while. I added a lot of stuff to it, changed the language up a little bit, obviously maturing within my own space, looking at the book. Something that I did 10 years ago, then of course you're going to, make it better. Added a couple of chapters to it that weren't there the first time. And, alhamdulillah, hopefully you guys can benefit from the book. The book is basically talking the paradox of change, meaning the more you try to avoid change, the more the change will happen. The only thing that does not change is change. And the more that we try to avoid changing, because when people convert to Islam, a lot of times they're, in this new religion, they don't really know what to expect, and they're holding on to a lot of their old ways. And as long as you hold on to your old ways, you are doing yourself a disservice, because you can't fully embrace the religion the way that it's supposed to when you have all of these old ways that you're holding on to. Right. Change is the only thing that is constant in the universe. Absolutely. It is the only consistent in our lives. All right. So this is what the book is about, and what I use as the premise for the book is one of the Sahabiyat, one of the female companions of the Prophet ﷺ by the name of Rumaysa bintu Milhan, and we know her pretty much as Sulaym. Sulaym was the mother of Anas ibn Malik. And what I do is I parallel her conversion to Islam and all of the challenges that she went through with Anas's father, who was a non-Muslim, who never converted, and, raising a son as a single mother, and, all of the different challenges that she went through as a woman who converted to Islam. I paralleled her life with the life of many women who convert to Islam today. They go through the same exact challenges and struggles. And this is what we are supposed to do. We are supposed to take examples, from the past and to make it relatable to where we are in the present. Allah does not expect from us to live in the past. We are to live in our present and understand our present looking at the past. Life is paradoxical in that you can only live it forward, but you can only understand it backwards. When we go back to the past and we understand what took place, then it makes everything that we are experiencing currently, it makes it relevant. You understand? So if you are interested in purchasing the book is currently at the printer. So hopefully within the next couple of days, inshallah ta'ala, the book will be ready by Wednesday, hopefully, inshallah. You can purchase the book. You can pre-order the book now using my PayPal, imamshadidmuhammad@gmail. You can go to PayPal. You can purchase the book. The book is $21.99. And with shipping in the U.S., I like to do priority shipping, which is 2 to 3 days. Which is a total of $6, so it would be $26.99 pretty much for the total. That's the cost of the book and the shipping. So if you go to PayPal and you pay for the book, be sure to leave your address, or you can send me an email, direct email, imamshadidmuhammad@gmail. Send me a direct email with your invoice as well as your shipping address, and inshallah ta'ala, the book will be shipped to you soon as it is printed. You cannot buy my books in the bookstore. I don't deal with Islamic bookstores. Cut out the middleman. I sell it myself. I don't need them to sell my books for me. I don't like to use Cash App simply because Cash App does not give you an invoice. So if you purchase the book on Cash App, you got to take a screenshot and you got to send it to me, and that's just really a cheap way of handling business. Cash App, let me just say this for you guys, for all of you who use Cash App for your business. Cash App is horrible for business. It does not give you an invoice. It does not give you a receipt. And it does not give you an address wherein you can print it. PayPal is more official, is more professional. It gives you an invoice. There's a space for you to leave your shipping address. And if anything goes wrong, you can actually contact PayPal to get your money back. You understand? Cash App is some ratchet hood, card and, method of transferring money from one person to another. I try to be very professional. I try not to use Cash App. So I would prefer you download a PayPal and you go through the PayPal, inshallah. All right? More professional. All right, you got people posting their cash app me. I need a couple of dollars. I mean, get out of here. This ghetto ratchet behind way of transferring money from one person to another. This way of begging for money. I mean, we got to do better than that, man. We got to do better than that. Seriously, man. We have to do better than that, man. It pains me to see Muslims still acting in this fashion, still conducting themselves in this, disorderly fashion, man. It's sad, man. It really is, because we're better than that. We're better than that. Especially if you want to be taken seriously as a professional. If you tell me you're running a business and you tell me to cash app you, I'm not buying nothing from you because you ain't professional. It's very effective. To each his own. There's no receipt or invoice that is printed up as a result of your Cash App purchase. You got to take a screenshot of it, and that now becomes your receipt that you bought something from somebody via Cash App. I'm sorry, that doesn't work for me. That doesn't work for me. I'm sorry. So, with that being said, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you all. Jazakumullahu khairan for lending me your time. I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's another thing. There is no taxes on Cash App. With PayPal, they take their share, they take their portion. That counts as your taxes being paid. Very good point. Very good point. Absolutely. Here we're talking about being professional. Leveling up, right? Leveling up. And stop functioning on these lower tiers of, behavior. Like we have to, we have to level up, man. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all. Jazakumullahu khairan for lending me your time and, your patience for us to get through the material. I pray that some of what I said, that you can find some benefit in it. Please make dua for me, inshallah ta'ala, as I make dua for all of you guys. I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives us all for, trying to, practice his religion to the best of our ability. Anyone who right now finds themselves identifying with some of the information that I mentioned of being broken or being vulnerable or being, fragile or being, weak or being in this situation, I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala al-Jabbar strengthens you. I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala al-Jabbar fixes you. I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala al-Jabbar gives you the strength that you need to propel yourself to a higher place than you were before you experienced being broken, before you experienced being fragile, before you experienced being weak, before you experienced being vulnerable. I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala al-Jabbar blesses you all and fixes us all and all of the weaknesses that we have. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala qadirun ala kulli shay, that Allah has power over all things and is capable of all things. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa salama tasliman kathira. Wa subhanaka rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al-mursaleen walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.